literally last night, I thought about best golf game that could ever be made. And I'm thinking, like, how do I make a golf game interesting?
It's a cooking game.
Yeah. Because I love The Sims Golf. That was fun. I loved that one to death. It was Sid Meier's Sim Golf. And I thought, let's just add immersion here. And what if, you have one beer.
You're relaxed a little bit more.
You're able to kind of like negotiate your conversations a little more easily. Your charisma goes up a little bit, but then there's like a meter.
So outlaw golf, and like this is a really simplistic, like niche part of what you were just describing. But there was a composure meter. So like if you had a terrible shot, or if you just like deliberately drove the ball into the rough, way off the fairway or something, your composure would suffer. And the way to recover was to beat your caddy.
You get your cardio in by walking versus taking the cart. There's this whole like strengthening thing that you get. And I was thinking like all the different layers that come with an actual becoming a golf pro. I thought there's a tool here we could use. You're like really, really immersive. You are the player. You have full control. Open world game for golf. Grand Theft Auto for golf.
Before we begin, the Gamer's Advocate would like to remind you that any episode could contain game spoilers, so watch or listen with discretion. And now your hosts, AM Komnenos, Banana, and Legion. Enjoy the show.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Gamer's Advocate. We are sadly missing Com today, so it's just going to be Legion and myself, Bananahammockrepublic. Today we are going to be looking at food and cooking in games. We're going to choose this topic because those familiar with Com know he is not the biggest foodie. He very much eats solely to keep himself alive. So we figured we'd address this topic and take a look at the presence of food in games and the role it can play and how it impacts gameplay mechanics, how it impacts storytelling, and when we feel it's appropriate.
Yeah, I have a brother-in-law who is a French chef in France, and I told that to Com, and Com's like, oh, that's neat. Whereas most people would be like, oh, where? Maybe I can go, No, not Com.
Com has no interest in eating their food. He's just like, good for him.
It's like, I can give you the information. He works for some really nice restaurants in the past. But yeah, he's been on one of those, like, what is it called? The Iron Chef things, but the European version, I don't know what they were. He's been on those. But yeah. And he was like, oh, that's neat. Yeah, that is the good impression of Com, I think. And he would probably disagree. He's like, no, I love food. Name me 5 foods.
Yeah. 5 foods that don't start with the word protein.
Baguette. They say man cannot live on bread alone, but Com can. Yeah. He does like his baguette. So anyway, I do think that cooking in games is really interesting because it's one of those mechanics in a game. When you find out it's there, you always want to explore it a little bit. Mm-hmm. When I played Red Dead and I was like, okay, so I have all this immersion. I have all these things that are real. I have a fireplace. I have this and that. And all I'm doing is gobbling down cans of beans. Yeah. It lost me there a little bit. So I get it. It's all about pushing the narrative, pushing the action, pushing the immersion for the most part, especially with the assets and whatnot. And then you're just like, the food's there just to give you the stamina or the healing properties. Yeah. And that's it. And I'm like, I kind of miss me there. And I totally get it. It would probably be lost on a lot of people if you had a mechanics that required you to cook all these things.
Yeah.
But I would have appreciated it personally.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of a lot of the cooking in like story focused games or like role playing games. You'll see those them introduce like a mechanic to actually cook foods, and a lot of players will just be like, oh, I don't want to deal with this. Like, I'm here for the other stuff. I wasn't here for cooking simulator. And I definitely get that. I definitely feel like there have been games where like they introduce a cooking mechanic and I'm like, how complicated is this? How much of my game am I going to be devoting to going and collecting ingredients now and making sure that like, do the ingredients spoil, or are they just permanently in my inventory for me to use? Do I need to figure out recipes? Do I need to like remember anything, or is this all saved in like a little recipe book that I can just refer to? And I definitely think it can get complicated, but there's also a way to do it correctly. And I think for a lot of those games, making the reward worth it is really what you have to focus on. If there's a gameplay reason for me to want to cook, I'll enjoy it because I want to cook. The game encourages me and gives me a good payoff for it. So I think that's something to keep in mind when introducing something like this to a game.
We talked before about Monster Hunter, and that's definitely a great mechanic that lets you do that, because it's not only just a buff, but it's a buff that has additional factors you can add to it. So if you have like certain ingredients, you can add to it as you're cooking, and then it gives you a certain type of buff for the next 30 minutes or an hour. I can't remember what it is. And that's a great mechanic, because the type of game that it is there's not much story. Monster Hunter Wilds is different, though. It is definitely more of a story. I really enjoyed that game. But again, it's trying to push action. And then if you're going to be helping others or be working as a team, you don't want to be the weak link. If you are, that's right. Fine, but you don't want to be that. So you can actually mitigate some of those factors that you go into that battle with, and cooking is one of them. And it has a great little animation, little neat things go with it. I think Monster Hunter Wilds did it just perfectly for that type of mechanic, for that type of game.
I definitely remember that was like a big part of the trailers for that game, where people were like looking at Monster Hunter Wilds and like, the game is beautiful, and there's definitely scenes in the trailer where they showcase like the character eating food or something, and you're just like, that looks so good. the food looks appetizing in a video game, which is not something that typically happens.
Yeah You'd have, I think it was like you'd have like a steak, and then you'd throw on some shrimp, and then like it had like these herbs that you put. I'm like,
yeah, they really made it work in that game. And I think the quality of the animation that they gave it, and like the graphical representation helped, but it really did come down to the fact that like it also empowered you the next, for like half hour or hour, whatever it is. It made you more capable in the core gameplay, and so you were naturally like, oh, okay, so I'm gonna go. I'm harvesting resources from all of these monsters anyway. Some of those resources will be used to make food, and I can kind of figure out the specific resources that fit my play style, so I can kind of focus on those creatures when I'm out on a hunt, and just kind of have this continuous buff going on. So like, I feel like it was just the right level of complexity, where you're always like, oh, I just need to kind of figure out what fits me, and I don't need to like compile every piece of data, because I know there are certain things that I just don't do with my playstyle, so I don't need to worry about the foods that impact those things. And then you get that cool payoff of the beautiful animation of it getting cooked up and your character eating it, and then you get the additional payoff of making the game a little bit easier in your next fight.
And Skyrim, things like that, where you are carrying food around. But really it's based on, in Dragon Age is more of like just a health potion. Skyrim too. But you can get your health back in Skyrim. And here's the thing about that. It's kind of lost in the base game, because I've played, the survival mode of that, and I really think it shines there. Because when you're playing survival mode Skyrim, it's kind of funny because I was thinking like the cheese wheels, especially like they're 20 pounds. And if you've ever been around a cheese wheel, you're not just going to be casually carrying around a 20-pound cheese wheel. It's just unwieldy, but you can in Skyrim, and that's fine. And those were godsends in survival because you can you don't have to cook them,
Yeah.
But here's the thing about Survival Skyrim is that you have to cook your food. Mm-hmm. You get a bonus for it. That's why if you're playing as a Khajiit or an Argonian, then they can eat raw food without any problems. But you also get a buff by cooking them. So that's the thing is with Survival Skyrim, it really shined in that mode because now I'm like putting down a tent in the middle of wherever, getting my health back, and then not getting sick while I'm trying to do my questing or whatever because I ate raw meat. But you can as an Argonian, and it had this like lore reasons for everything, so it was really good.
Yeah, I think that was one of those additions to Skyrim that like just made a lot of sense. Because in the base game, without that kind of survival mode, I never had food on me. I would like just refuse to pick it up because it's like I have health potions, I have healing spells, I have everything I need. If I get like a disease or something, I can go to those the shrines and cleanse myself or whatever. So I don't need food. And then they were like, well, let's find a way to integrate food into a playstyle or a game system that actually gives you a reason to use it and kind of encourages players to explore all of the stuff we actually did build into the game. Because, I mean, I think you could cook food in the original. There was just almost no reason to. So, I think that was a good idea to implement that survival mode and give people a reason.
It was like anything else, you have ore, but you get more money if you turn it into a knife. So the vegetables and all the other stuff that you would get, you could cook it. It could give you a little bonus to your health, maybe a little bit of extra restoration stuff, but you sold it. That's what it was for, But yeah, Survival Skyrim, definitely. Ooh, I was living off of, because you have to eat in that version.
Yep.
You have to. And so it's one of those like, you don't want to make your gamers have to do certain things, but those who are into the Survival Skyrim, trust me, it's peak. It's the way to go.
Yeah, I think that's another part of it is that like survival mode was an option, and so for the people who chose that, it already suited them. Like they knew what they were getting into, and that's why it worked really well. Because I think if that were the default, I'd be like, I don't want to make food. Like, I just want to go on my adventure and kill a dragon. Like, I don't want to worry about food. But if you're looking for that more immersive playstyle with, like, a character who actually has to eat and has to sleep, then, yeah, the survival mode is exactly what you're looking for. And I love that became an option for the players who wanted it.
Yeah, because I think the misnomer was that survival was more like hardcore, like you died once, and no, it's not like that at all. It's just like the base game, just you have to survive. That's it.
Yeah.
Like you're camping in the wild. It's the best way to put it. I loved it. Yeah. Loved it. Now, to designate the difference between, I guess, because we tend to go down an RPG tree quite a bit.
Yep.
But there's obviously games that have cooking in them. They're based on a cooking model. There's the cook. I keep wanting to call it cook stuff, but that's from Dave the Diver. Cook stuff. But there's like cooking simulators and things like that. And the interesting thing about those is that I didn't think we'd kind of go over that too much, but I think what makes those games interesting, because at the end of the day, it's just you're just cooking things, right? And that can be fun. But they introduce a lot of things like unwieldy mechanics. Oh, you people are grading you so that way you can upgrade your store or your restaurant or whatever you're trying to do. Yep. So there's a pattern there. So that makes sense. But it's like you'll present the perfectly done steak with the cream or the butter or whatever you're adding to it. Then you forgot to like cook the shrimp or something because you're under a time pressure. So there's certain mechanics that are added there that aren't natural or normal, but it's just part of the gameplay. But I don't really play those kind of games because I tend to want to have a good, strong narrative reason for me even being a chef.
Yeah. I definitely think I think there was a game on Game Pass that I had that was Cooking Simulator. I think I played it on stream a bit, and it just didn't land for me because there was no kind of engagement there. It was just Cooking Simulator, and there was the progression of gradually like unlocking more recipes and then it kind of expanding your kitchen with additional tools and things along those lines. But there wasn't any immersion there. There wasn't anything for me to really latch onto. And like, I don't think it was a bad game. It was just not suited to what I was looking for. And then meanwhile, there's a game like Overcooked, which none of that immersion in terms of the actual cooking. It is like very much a silly little game with very basic mechanics, but there was a story behind it, and the like party game element where you're constantly yelling at people like get the hell out of your way or provide you with an ingredient you need or something along those lines. I found that game way more engaging, way more enjoyable, and it's less about cooking, but like that's the whole point of the game. It's like you're cooking, but are you really?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But in games like Stardew, for instance, that's a big part of the game, but it's not the central thing. Whereas Banana knows I love to death Traveler's Rest. And Traveler's Rest, ultimately, it's about making a tavern and getting it all built up. And so guess what you're doing? You're doing a lot of cooking, of cooking. All your stuff is behind recipes, but it's not just for food and dishes, but also different types of alcohol. You got, mead. You got everything. Beer. You got all wines. You make whatever.
I was definitely thinking Graveyard Keeper a little bit when we were getting into this topic, and that's another one. Like Graveyard Keeper, there's so much going on. There's a lot of different like individual kind of mini game kind of almost functions for the Graveyard Keeper to fulfill. And you basically can become a tavern keeper in that game. And it is a great way to make money. It is also like almost a complete game unto itself, which I feel like is almost where Traveler's Rest comes from is, yeah, we're just going to focus on that part of the game. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of those games where like it's done well as a mini game to the point that like you can just lose yourself in that functionality. Be like, yeah, I'm gonna hang out, just do this for a bit.
Yeah, because each one of those games has a narrative behind it. You're not just a tavern keeper person. You have these other things that you're doing. That's what really gets me, and that's why I said Cooking Simulator, stuff like that. They're great to watch here and there, but I wouldn't say that they're captivating for me. They're definitely not something I drag myself into it, even though I love the cooking in games. I just, anytime I see it, I'm like, oh, that's neat. Kind of like we went over the fishing. It's like when I see fishing, I'm like, we fishing? All right.
I don't know why, but I'm going to enjoy this.
Yeah. And so cooking's one of those. It's like, oh, how are we using cooking in this mode? Okay.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a game that I actually didn't remember on this topic until I went to look up the like cooking simulator I had on Game Pass, and I saw Spiritfarer listed there. And I'm a huge fan of that game, and cooking plays a role in that game, but it's not the same kind of like RPG based impact that cooking has. It's not providing you with specific buffs or anything. It's appealing to the spirits that you are kind of helping find a closure. And each of them has a favorite meal. And you kind of gather a bunch of ingredients and test out recipes and come up with like your little recipe book and hope to figure out what it is that they like. And they refuse to eat the same thing twice in a row, so you have to find like an alternative to their favorite meal that is also something that they like. And I thought that was a really effective way of like encouraging the player to continue exploring this, because normally in a game, I'm just like, oh, I'll find the one recipe that I actually care about. I know that's exactly how I play like Valheim is, all right, I have 3 slots for food. I have this play style. Let me figure out what those 3 recipes are that I actually need and forget everything else. And in Spiritfarer, it was like, no, I need everybody's favorite food and then everybody's backup recipe. And I'll keep exploring in the hopes that I can find like, oh, this will also make them happy, but it uses 3 less ingredients, so it's less for me to go and farm in order to make them satisfied while they're riding on the ship with me. I thought that was like a really unique way of implementing it in a way that's still encouraging the player to cook, but not for like the personal reasons that you see in like role-playing games where it's like, oh, I want to buff for my character, I want to improve my combat ability. Spiritfarer was just like, yeah, you're hosting guests, you want them to have the best time, so figure out what foods they like and offer that to them.
Yeah, that's a great mechanic because you're integrating so many things at the same time, but for a narrative reason, and that's the best. Gathering everybody together for like a dinner can create those moments where your party is a little bit more solidified. And if you're doing something that could integrate the types of food that you have, for instance, like in Mass Effect, you have where you get the Ceres ice brandy for you, the doctor. Yeah. And it's a moment. You didn't cook anything, I get that, but you just brought back a spirit for her, and then you have it together and you're able to kind of bond over that. Even though you don't have very many dialogues with the doctor, Chocobo, Dr. Chocolate.
Dr. Chocolates. Let's get her name right. People are going to think we don't know anything about Mass Effect.
No, see, that's a YouTube trick. You say it wrong so people can correct you and get your comments. Right. Come on, Banana.
So Cunningham's Law?
Yeah. So,
best way to figure out something on the internet is to announce incorrect information and wait for somebody to correct you.
And sometimes correct information and have people correct you anyway.
Oh yeah, that's Banana's Law.
But yeah, you know, it's a small moment. It's not anything you do regularly, but it hits. Why does it hit? Because you're bonding over a shared meal or shared item that is consumed.
Yeah, I definitely think having that kind of narrative consistency with the game mechanic really drives home quality for a lot of these things. So while you're talking about this, and the fact that you mentioned the fishing mini games, naturally I have to bring this back to Final Fantasy 15. They are all kind of interconnected. So like we've talked about this one a bit before on the channel, and Final Fantasy 15 is almost like a road trip simulator for a lot of the game. You and 3 buddies are like, you play as Noctis, and your 3 buddies are in a car originally traveling to another like kingdom, more or less, for Noctis's wedding. And then shit goes down and you have to go on this big adventure, but you're still like driving cross country. You are on a road trip, and you will periodically stop and camp. And there's like a day-night cycle that encourages you to take a break and sleep, or you'll just be constantly bombarded by enemies. And when you stop and take a break, you camp, you set up, you know, a little cooking spit, and one of your more culinary capable companions provides you with a meal, and you get to like choose from the list of recipes you've already figured out. And that fishing mini game plays directly into this because you use the fish as a food source. And then the meal you choose provides a buff for you for the next 8 hours or whatever. It's all interconnected, and it all fits with the story of, you know, we're traveling across the country. We're driving on these roads where there's not going to be like an inn every time we need to take a rest, so we have to kind of improvise and survive. And I think I really, really enjoyed that, despite the fact that it was like, I don't want to stop this adventure I'm going on. I don't want to camp for the night. I don't want to. I just want to get where I'm going and continue with the story. But like, I think it was done so well in that game that it didn't bother me nearly as much, because I'm much more used to, especially in Final Fantasy games, let's just keep going and push forward and get through this adventure, and the real elements, the things where like people need to sleep and eat and use the bathroom, none of that stuff comes up. It's very much the was it the TV series 24? He's not a real person for those 24 hours. It is all action, all moving the story forward. But because they did it so well in 15, it didn't bother me. It was something I actually appreciated. And I would go off and do my little fishing mini game so that I could come up with new recipes. And also the fishing mini game was tied to the combat, because you could earn items and rewards. So like that interconnectedness of everything, and recognizing that like, if you're going to put a mechanic in the game, it needs to fit with all of the other things that go on your game. I think that was a big part of why I enjoyed 15.
Yeah. Because, I mean, there's a survivability aspect to it. And if you're removing that issue, then you don't need to have it. But you could still have it, because it could, again, add to those buffs that would, you don't need to. But if you want that +5 constitution for the next 30 minutes or the next mission or whatever, it's there. It would be nice to have in most of those games. I know Star Wars Outlaws came real close to what I'm talking about, because you would have these moments where you would be able to like sit down and have a dish and eat, but it was with your little companion. And what you were doing is that you were unlocking a treat type, which gave him a different type of ability. Mm-hmm. And that was good. That was great. It gave me incentive, but I wasn't cooking anything necessarily. I wasn't, I was just looking for these places that had those locations and unlocking the ability later. And not only that, I love Nyx. I love the little character, but if they were to do this with like a companion that you have, a ship companion, suddenly you're bridging a narrative gap. And the only companion you have really outside of Nyx is a droid, so he's not going to eat. So that's what I'm saying, is that they came real close to what we're talking about, and you missed the force for the trees type thing. Yeah,
it's kind of like the long rest in Baldur's Gate, where it gives you that story progression where certain things will only trigger if you take a long rest, but you're kind of encouraged to take the time to just sit down with your companions, have the conversations you need to have with them, get some sleep, and then play through whatever cutscene. But there's the food you choose beyond just fulfilling the minimum required supplies to camp doesn't really play an impact. So they kind of missed an opportunity there, but I also think there are a lot of people who are like, this game is complicated enough. I don't need to worry about like the additional complexities of choosing my food. They're just camp supplies.
Something to give you more layers that you don't really need, but because you made the effort to listen and or read something that Dark Justiciar's like, I don't know. Because you do go to the Shard's Temple and you do see a whole table laid out of different foods that they would have liked.
Yeah, exactly.
So there would have been a narrative discussion there, or at least you would have noted it. And so if you added it for some kind of meal after that point, then it unlocked a potential cutscene. Sure, why not?
Yeah, and you have that companion approval system. Just choosing their favorite meal might give them a little buff there. I mean, I feel like that's a very effective way to give players an out if they make a decision not knowing that like, oh, Lae'zel didn't like that. Well, shit, now how do I make this up to her? And you can be like, oh, well, I'll cook, Githyanki food for our next long rest, and she'll feel a little bit better about me. Yeah, I think there's definitely a way to tie that in with the way the Baldur's Gate 3 works.
Yeah, and we're not talking about like a 10-minute cutscene. Just something simple.
Yeah, just something quick.
Mm-hmm.
And just a little feedback that says like, oh yeah, you clearly found something that suited one of your companions. Here's a little reward to say, good job.
Yeah, once you've unlocked it, then maybe it unlocks plus 10 companion favor, and then after that it's just plus 1.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah, kind of like the gift system in Dragon Age Origins, where like you can find a companion's favorite gift, but as you give them that gift, it progressively awards you less approval.
Yeah, I think they got that from the original game had these specific gifts. Originally, it was like this DLC thing, but the original game said, hey, look, like if you find Morgan's this, you find Morgan's that, and then you find her mirror, and they're tied to the story of Morgan, or they're tied to the story of Sten. That's why you gave them those gifts. Because you were returning something that either that they lost or something that they favored that they had a discussion about. Then they turned it into like this DLC thing where you could just like, throw a treat at them and they loved it. So yeah. Yeah,
that DLC is very funny because I think it unlocks like 2 items for each companion, and each item like has a huge impact on their approval. But if you want to give them both of them, it just resets it back to where it started. Because one of them is like an antagonistic gift, and the other is like something they'll really appreciate. So they just counterbalance each other. And some of them become equipment. So like you can give, I think Leliana's, you can give her like a pair of shoes that are like really, really ugly or something, and she hates them. But then she can equip them later after you give her that gift.
I remember there was, I think, an Alistair doll you can give to Morgan, and she uses it as a voodoo doll. Yep. So, yeah, it's pretty neat. But yeah, Sten, he likes his cookies, so you have to find like little pastries and stuff. So again, food.
Yep. Ogren likes booze. Wynn also likes booze.
Yeah, Wynn was hard for me to figure out because I knew what she liked, but I couldn't identify what was associated with her, Because she just doesn't hate anything.
Yeah, I feel like I definitely referred to like a guide for a lot of those gifts. Like I tried to figure it out on my own. I was like, oh, this sucks. I keep giving these people the wrong stuff and then have to reload the save and try and figure it out again. I'll just look it up.
Well, speaking of Dragon Age, I mean, some of my most memorable moments in Veilguard, like when you go to Treviso and have coffee, and you're looking over the river. Oh my God, it looked great. I love that.
Yeah, I thought that it was one of those things where like it feels very slow and almost like interrupting to the story. But when you first go to Treviso and Lucanus is kind of like stopping at each of the little stalls to pick up specific items for the companions, and there's food items that he's grabbing. It did like a really good job of making Treviso feel real and giving you a little more insight into the character of Lucanus. I thought it was just a kind of an effective way of using what they had already established to kind of enhance the experience for you.
Yeah, I was looking forward to going to Treviso, but I had no idea I was going to love it as much as I did. Like, my goodness, they went overboard with this. But yeah, and the lighting was perfect to me. I love the dark scene, the everything's done at night, and it's like just oil lamps and candles, and it's just beautiful. Just beautiful. But and like I said, there's scenes that you specifically meet Lucanus for coffee to meet his contact and stuff, and that's what you're there for. And he's like, and that's what he remembers. He was like, this is what I've been missing for the last 10 years or whatever it was. But yeah, bonding moments I think are really important in RPGs for cooking stuff. And if you have any ability to impact them with the actual things that you make, I think that really lends itself to the storytelling, because you're listening to the characters, you're applying some of that information, and you're going out of your way to make that extra effort. And then you're rewarded either with bonuses or lore. To me, that's its own reward.
I do think there's also a kind of like almost like a character trope in a lot of RPGs to have like the character that you associate with cooking. So like Lucanus was like a foodie. Or you go and talk to Nev and she's like, oh, I have my favorite spot to get food, because she's not the type who cooks for herself. It does effectively give you a new avenue to expand that character and develop them a bit. So I think having those characters that like you associate with a specific aspect of food makes the characters feel more real as well.
I just bought this game that came out called Cast and Chill. I'd link that to you.
I did see that.
They don't say much in the video about what it's about, but it's really just going to the bait shop, upgrading your stuff. You have a boat, you can get different types of engines, and I think you can even pick out what kind of dog you want, because he's like at the bow. And I think they got like a hound dog, they got a golden retriever, they got different types of dogs, and they have different types of environments, so you can tell like you're like in the like Maine or something, or you're in the Colorado, or you're somewhere else. So they have totally different environments. You're in the fall, you're in the winter. I was like, man, for like $10 or whatever it costs, I was like, this is a pretty neat little game.
Yeah.
So
it's $12, but it's currently on sale.
Okay.
Well, it's on sale for $12.
Yeah, I don't, like I said, I haven't fired it up, but if it actually has cooking in it, we are talking the game that I said I haven't never seen.
Legion's ideal game.
You got to fish and cook. Oh my goodness. Then I'm gonna have to go fight some Argonians, get some moon sugar. Cast and Chill and Dovahkiin.
Yeah. I feel like Cast and Chill kind of sends the message that like there's probably not an adventure going on.
Cast as in casting fireballs.
Yeah. Sorry. I was way off.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely, I think we had talked about this a little bit. I think there's an avenue in those kind of like sports simulator games because I remember playing through some previously. There's like a career mode where you can follow one character through their career and try to like make them the most capable version of themselves and perform and maybe enter like the Hall of Fame or whatever it is. So you're going through and you're training, you're practicing, and then you're building up your skills and you're trying to showcase everything on game day. There's definitely a way to integrate cooking into like your game day preparations, to say like, oh, well, what is your diet leading up to the game and how does that impact your performance? So yeah, I definitely think there's the possibility to integrate cooking into a sports game.
Yeah, the only genre that I don't really see cooking ever, I don't know of a single one. I was thinking about it in my head, but the horror genre doesn't lend itself to cooking. And,
yeah,
it's one of, and I'm not thinking of like being chased type horror. I'm just thinking, the broader scope. Like Silent Hill, that would get in the way. Resident Evil, you have those herbs, that's about it, but
it's not really cooking.
But yeah, I mean, horror is the only one that I never ever see cooking, not even referenced. And it's so odd that it's the outlier that you never even associate with any type of mechanism. So,
do you see cooking fitting into specific kind of categories within gaming more? Because I'm thinking like, you try to inject cooking into Metroid or Mass Effect, it feels a little out of place, but in Dragon Age it felt a little more appropriate. So like, does that medieval fantasy lend itself more to cooking as opposed to sci-fi?
I think anytime you have an environment that is more homey, I think you kind of lean into it. So a campfire or campsite, Dragon Age Origins is just based on that.
Yeah.
Whereas Mass Effect, you're on a ship. It's meant to be a little sterile in a way, So
Yeah, I also feel like there's that element that like technology kind of moves you away from like the appreciation of the art form of cooking, because you're just like, oh well, I have a machine that can do all of that for me, so now I just have food. And at that point, why would you put a mechanic in your game to operate the machine that dispenses food? Because it's not really cooking anymore. But in medieval games or games that are set with that like camping mechanic, there's an actual kind of like effort to cooking. So maybe we want to implement a mechanic for that.
Yeah, it's more rustic for sure. Yeah. With Mass Effect, some of the best scenes are usually around a dining table or a bar. You know, Mass Effect 1, you know, you get into
most of them are a bar.
Yeah. But even Liara, when she's like hanging out by the table near where her mom's works, I mean, that's, yeah. But yeah, I get it. It's one of those, some of the better things you see that, like I said, they come real close to really bridging that, but it's not really, you know, the sushi that you have, that's a memorable thing. You're going to have sushi, but you never have the sushi, of course. Mm-hmm. That's the frustrating part. They got so close. Mass Effect could have been so good. Yeah, they screwed it up. Yeah.
5 out of 10.
Yeah.
No sushi.
And no sushi. Yeah. They tease the sushi. The cake is a lie. Yeah. And but yeah, I think the technology kind of does remove it sterilizes the idea and the concept, but I don't think it should. I really don't think it should.
I definitely think there is that that little side quest in Mass Effect 1 where the cook on board the Normandy asks you to go get better ingredients to provide for, you know, the crew, and there's not really much to it. You go to a shop in the Citadel, you buy the ingredients, you bring them back, and you just get like a little conversation between some of the crew and the cook, where he's like, hey, food doesn't suck today, or something along those lines. It's a nice little kind of like team building, but doesn't really get into the cooking. It's just, you know, you got better quality ingredients. Okay.
And it would be more interesting if he also lived, because you got him those ingredients. Man, if we didn't have those ingredients, I wouldn't have the energy to make it out of there alive. But, you know.
Something like that, like almost over the top, like driving home the importance of food.
Yeah, everybody's
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, everybody's coming out of the little chrysalis and they're like, oh, I'm so, like, thank goodness for the chef. He made us those supplies. And he's like, yeah, without me, you guys would be dead right now.
Honestly, like just the idea that like in order to make all of the other crappy food palatable, he just loads it up with like salt or something. And so now everybody's dehydrated and they don't last as long in collector prison or whatever captivity. I could kind of see that making a little bit of sense and fitting within the world of Mass Effect. So there's definitely a way to kind of drive home that importance.
Yeah, you see definitely in Survivor games a lot. Obviously cooking, that's like a central thing, you know. Mm-hmm. Subnautica, Raft, and any of those. I don't know if what is that Viking survival co-op one? What's it called?
Valheim?
Valheim. Yeah, I don't know if you cook in Valheim. I haven't played it.
You do. Yeah, I mentioned that a little bit earlier. Like in Valheim, your character has kind of like their base health and stamina, and it's really low. So like you have to eat food in order to be productive and survive in that game. And you can find like berries and just forage for things you can eat quickly. But in order to get like a really solid improvement on your health and stamina, you need to cook. So that game really drives home the importance of cooking.
Yeah. So like I said, the Survivor games definitely lend itself, but a lot of them are fairly rustic. Subnautica is one of the only ones I could think of that doesn't do that. I know there's other Survivor games that have come out and that are more, you know, modern and futuristic. I played Stranded Alien Dawn. I think that's the name of it. Anyway, it's one of those colony sims.
Okay.
I would like it a lot more if I could have a lot more little sim people, but they're so individual, every one of them. That's kind of like RimWorld, but in a not a pixel setting. You build a little thing trying to get people off world to get rescued. And again, even though it's futuristic, they bring it back down to rustic, and that's why you're always cooking and stuff. So it's a survival game set in the future, but you're still in a rustic setting. So I think that's why it seems familiar and more natural. But yeah, those survival games really kind of lend itself. Now I've been playing a lot of Dune, tons and tons and tons and tons of Dune. There's no food mechanic, and a lot of people have talked about that. And I do think it would help, but I don't know how they would integrate it in Dune. It would just be protein paste.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely plays into what you were saying. Like those games where survival is a big part of it feel like at a certain point you have to recognize that survival means eating. But as you were bringing that up, I was thinking like those survival horror is where that disconnect happens. Like if I had to worry about eating food playing Alien Isolation, no, just no, I don't want to think about that. I am too scared to cook right now. Even if I found like a bag of chips, it'd be like, that's too loud, we're not eating.
The chips are a distraction. Throw it over there.
Yeah, that would be the purpose of them. Like crinkle the bag and throw it.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, you're not wrong, because when you're playing that game, everything sets you off. Everything. Yeah. And you like, there's like somebody will shoot a gun. It's like, why are you shooting? Why are you shooting? Yeah. Well, we've talked quite a bit about food, our favorite subject. If you like food, tell us in the comments.
Wow, what a specific call to action that was. If you like food,
Com would be the only one who doesn't comment.
Calm.
Yeah, if you're not calm. Yeah. So tell us in the comments any game that you like the mechanics of the food or didn't like the mechanics of food in that game, or if you would like to see it in games that aren't present. That would be an interesting topic, because it's really hard to come up with. It's really, I should say, easy to come up with examples that we know. But other situations were like, what, it might have actually fit better in that game, but it requires revisualizing the game and things like that. So I'm not 100% sure that that's always immediate in our, like, oh, you know what? Dragon Age Origins probably could have been better with a little food mechanic. It's kind of hard to always think of that on the fly. But yeah, if there's any game that you think of that could have helped itself by adding a food element, or maybe would have helped itself by removing the food element, let us know. I still think Monster Hunter Wilds and Monster Hunter, the series itself, is probably the best example of that because of what it's trying to accomplish. So it really understood itself. Knew the assignment. It gives you a cutscene, gives you everything. I think that's the best example. But we will check you guys later. Like the video if you like it, and hopefully next time we'll have Com to weigh in on his food position, maybe. Bye-bye.
Not enough baguettes.
Yeah, not enough baguettes. Bye-bye.
No! Just stand up and stab him in the foot. Yes! Who is your father now, child? Yes, I'm never playing this stupid game again. It's done. Fuck you, Radon. Fuck you, Starscourge.